Okay, folks, here we are at Smith Point County Park. Let's check the time. 2 p.m. Lucky Dog, thank you for joining. Welcome. Good to see you. Let's take a walk over to the Fire Island National Seashore Pavilion. Andrea, good to see you. I hope you were able to catch my 8710 video a half hour ago, 40 minutes ago from Mastic Shirley. We had an unscheduled meet there. They had an equipment move of a C3 car with a DE30 locomotive. Met with 8710 heading east. Good. I hope that turned out all right. It didn't record on my camera roll though. I'll have to figure out another way to upload it tonight when I get home. But here we are at Smith Point. I was going to try to do a live YouTube broadcast using the app that you couple with that, but I couldn't get it to work, so we're on Periscope with your comments on the side of the screen. This will be a short trip over here. Not going too far today. Hi, folks. Very breezy over here. Beautiful day though for January. It was 60 degrees at the railroad station. A little cooler down here by the ocean. Quite a sea breeze coming in right now out of the south-southwest. That's the direction we're heading right now. We'll take a quick walk down to the ocean. Here's the sign for the Smith Point County Park. And this is the traffic circle coming off of the Smith Point Bridge. And over straight ahead is the Ranger Station and the Visitor Center for the Fire Island National Seashore. So we'll take a walk over there, see how that is. I have my iPhone mounted in my Osmo 3 gimbal stabilizer, so hopefully that'll keep the picture somewhat steady as we walk along here. Probably going to pick up a lot of wind noise in the microphone today, even though I have my external mic hooked up with the little wind sock on it, wind suppression sock. And I already have the sniffles. So if you hear these strange sounds, folks, it's my blowing my nose occasionally here. The air temperature is probably down here at the beach is probably between 55 and 60. Let's split the difference. We'll call it 58. But with the wind chill the wind coming off the ocean, it's probably more like in the lower 50s. We're not going to walk too far today, but we will take a look at the Atlantic. It's very rough out here from what I can see from this distance. Okay. Let me pan around here. Tilt it properly. National Park Service, Fire Island National Seashore. So this is the east end of the Fire Island National Seashore, and this particular area is known as the Otis Pike High Dune Wilderness, named after a former congressman from the 1st Congressional District here on Long Island, who was primarily responsible for the federal funding to protect this land, this barrier beach, as a national seashore. So we who live here are deeply indebted to his memory for that. Because at one time, back in the 1950s and 60s, the power brokers wanted to put a 4-lane highway down the middle of this barrier beach. Can you imagine what a disaster that would have been? But fortunately that was stopped in its tracks. So this is looking west, back up Fire Island. Fire Island National Seashore, the High Dune Wilderness. The ranger station is open on Saturdays and Sundays now, this time of year. Okay. I'll show you the map and the pictures on the side of the building here, so you'll get again see where we are. This is the visitor center, also the ranger station, located right here. This green area is the Otis Pike High Dune Wilderness, part of the National Seashore. Here's the Atlantic Ocean. Here's Great South Bay, Bellport Bay. Here's the Narrows Bay, going over here to Moriches Bay. And these are the communities of Shirley and Mastic Beach. And over here is Moriches, Center Moriches, Mastic, Shirley. So we come down William Floyd Parkway, and we come over the Smith Point drawbridge here, and then park in the Smith Point parking lot. And the Fire Island National Seashore runs back toward Fire Island Inlet, about 28 miles or so to the west of us, 30 miles to the west of us. Now there still are private lands. The green denotes the park, and the yellow denotes pre-existing villages such as Davis Park, directly across from Patchogue. And then further to the west, Fire Island Pines, Cherry Grove, Point of Woods, all of the long-standing Fire Island summer resort colonies. And they're accessed by ferry boat from the south shore of Long Island, from Bay Shore, Sayville, and Patchogue. And then, of course, there's the Robert Moses Causeway, which goes across the west end of Great South Bay from the south shore of Long Island over to Robert Moses State Park, and then you can access the Fire Island National Seashore from the west end also of Fire Island. But that's pretty much an overview of what the Fire Island National Seashore is all about. Now let's take a walk up the steps here. I'll hold on to the railing with one hand and my camera, my iPhone, in the gimbal with the other hand, and we'll get a look from up above. Oh, rough ocean today. Okay. I'll just pan around slowly. Tilt it properly first. Looks like low tide again. Well, we're 2 days past full moon. So this time of day it would be a low tide here at this location. Got some huge rollers coming in today off the Atlantic out of the southwest. We've had this persistent wind pattern here in the eastern part of the United States, where it's been bringing up humid air from the south for the last few weeks. And although the ocean temperature right now is probably in the low 40s Fahrenheit, the air temperature, as I mentioned today, has gotten up into 60. New York City, I think it's even in the mid-60s, approaching 70 today. But out here 60 miles east of New York, right where we are now, it's probably the high 50s, which is highly unusual for January on Long Island. We don't know how much longer that's going to last, but let's enjoy it while it does last. So this is looking out over the Atlantic. I'll turn to the east-northeast direction, and the building in the background is the pavilion for the Smith Point County Park, Suffolk County Ocean Bathing Beach. People are over there, and we park in the parking lot there for both Smith Point Park and also the National Seashore. And then to the north, I'm looking back north up toward William Floyd Parkway and the Smith Point Drawbridge. So driving wise, from my home to the parking lot here is 9.4 miles. Takes about 20 minutes to get here. Thank you for joining. Alright, so we're up on the second floor, the deck of the visitor center here of the National Seashore Ranger Station. Let me just pan around again to the southwest. We'll look out over the ocean, and then we'll go down and we'll take a walk down to the beach, get you closer to the ocean. Relative humidity is pretty high right now with these persistent southwest winds off the Atlantic bringing moisture in. Thank you very much. It is pretty awesome here. It's a beautiful day for January here on the south shore of Long Island. 40.8 degrees latitude, north latitude, 72 degrees west longitude. Again, 60 miles or 100 kilometers due east of Midtown Manhattan, New York City. Oh, the visitor center is up. Let's walk through here and I'll walk out on the other side. The Rangers have displays here at different times. And you see here, let me show you some of the things that are inside here.
Vertebrae, of course, I have no idea what that, the vertebrae, I don't know if that was, you know.
Here's a skeleton of a Virginia white-tailed deer. They are indigenous to the area here,
I mean, they're very well.
Fire Island.
Species. I have no idea, but I'm going to separate them. But I didn't know how. It's like, oh yeah, I could try to find somebody who can identify the skull.
And
So, you say
various shells and
common or
leftovers from the water area here.
That's what I said. I said, at least if I can find like basic, like,
Okay, bear with me with the camera, folks.
Something just like the skull, the skeleton.
Let's step out this door.
What it is. This is not
I have to catch this. Whoa, the wind will catch me.
That's where David, the artist, does his painting down there sometimes, right? Do you remember David, who we met with the beard? Yeah, that's where he does painting down there. But you can see some of his paint is on the, some of his blue paint is on there.
Okay, this is looking west, back up Fire Island, back toward New York City. Pretty much a westerly bearing right now. The ocean is to my left, the inland bay, Great South Bay, although the east end of it out here is locally known as Bellport Bay. And Fire Island Barrier Beach separates
Oh, thank you, yeah.
separates us from the ocean, pounding the main south shore of Long Island. Again, this is looking to the southwest. This is the Otis Pike High Dune Wilderness. I'm not going to walk down here today because it's a little too far today, but about a mile and a half, mile and 3/4 to the west of us is the breach where Superstorm Sandy on October 29th, 2012 broke through the barrier beach here, broke through Fire Island and created a new inlet. It's not navigable. It's a very treacherous body of water right now. And the National Park Service, the Seashore people have made a command decision to let nature take its course and see what happens as far as nature filling it in. So that was 7.5 years ago, and it is starting to fill in again. It got to several thousand feet wide after it initially broke through, but it's starting to fill in again. Boating through it is not permitted. They even stopped kayakers from going through it because that was getting a little too dangerous. All right, let's walk down. I'll hold on to the camera and the railing one step at a time. And we'll take a walk down to the ocean. Very breezy here today, as you can probably hear in the background noise on the microphone. Okay. Okay, we'll walk down. Thank you for joining. Welcome. Welcome to the Fire Island National Seashore, the eastern end of it here at Smith Point. Okay, here we go. We'll walk down this way toward the ocean. And let's hope my T-Mobile cell link holds up here. There is no Wi-Fi available in this area, so I'm doing this by T-Mobile link. Clothing required. Well, for sure, especially on a day like today. That's a poor joke, folks. What the government is telling you is no nude bathing or anything like that in the summertime. No sunbathing. Now, swimming is not permitted here in the summertime. You could probably get away with wading, but there's no swimming allowed because there's no lifeguards here. The ocean swimming would be to the east of us, to my left, at the Smith Point County Park, where they have the lifeguard towers. Thanks for joining. Here is our classic South Shore beach, ocean beach on Long Island. This type of sandy beach extends all the way from Brooklyn to Montauk Point. And of course in the city you have the Coney Island beaches and then the Rockaway beaches. Nassau County you have Jones Beach State Park plus the town beaches. And then once Fire Island starts, you have the Robert Moses State Park, and then the National Seashore. Then here at Smith Point, you have the Suffolk County Smith Point County Park. And Fire Island essentially runs until you hit Moriches Inlet, about 3 miles to the east of us. And then on the other side is the West Hampton Beach, Barrier Beach, village of West Hampton Dunes, and then the village of West Hampton Beach. Then you're into the Hamptons and the east end of Long Island. And then at Southampton, where Shinnecock Inlet ends, then there's no more Barrier Beach. So then it's the mainland of the South Fork of Long Island that's up against the ocean. Let's take a walk down to the surf. Low tide, very low tide. The ocean is way out right now. Again, that's a function, as I mentioned earlier, being about 2 days past full moon in January. Also, this time of year, the tide cycles are at their greatest, because even though it's winter time, the earth is it's closest to the sun at this time of year. So the gravity of the sun, the moon, creates the super high tides and super low tides. You've got 6 to 8 foot breakers offshore here a little bit, a couple of 100 yards out, possibly even taller than that. These rollers are coming in and they're breaking out on the outer sandbar out there offshore, and then they reform, some of them reform, and then they break in on the inner sandbar and then the beach itself here. So right here along the shoreline where I'm walking right now, and we're gonna watch out for rogue waves coming in. These waves and breakers here are 2 to 3 feet, 4 feet in some cases. But out further, the next line out, they've got to be on the magnitude of 8 to 10 feet out there, if not higher. So it's quite a rough surf today. thank you for joining. This is again looking west, back up Fire Island. I'll turn around and show you that's the Ranger Station Visitor Center, and you see the primary dune line which abuts the beach, and where you see the woman walking her dog there, she's up about 6 foot, nominally about 6 foot or so above mean sea level right now. The tops of those dunes are 8 to 10 feet above mean sea level. And then behind the primary dune line you have what we call the secondary dune line, and then in some cases there's even a third or a tertiary dune line. So this is what protects Long Island from the open North Atlantic Ocean, the barrier beach here. Let's walk a little closer down toward the water again. Well, I think if you look closely enough, you can see where the tide had reached a few hours ago. You can see by the color of the sand, and it's still moist here. So we probably still have an outgoing tide right now. And then high tide will probably be about 8 or 9 o'clock tonight. And I always like to tell people I'm looking in a bearing that is just about due east, 90 degrees. So the next landfall that direction would be the coast of Portugal, the Iberian Peninsula. So 3,600 miles across the North Atlantic to Europe. And then if I look in this direction, which is to the east-northeast, because Long Island gets further north the further east you get. So that's looking toward the British Isles. Yeah, they used to do that here too. I'm not so sure they do it anymore, but years and years ago I remember the town trucks coming around and collecting Christmas trees to bury on the beach to stabilize the sands. Now whether it did any good or not, I can't comment, but you know, it was something that folks wanted to do. I thought it was a pretty good idea at the time. Yeah, let's get a little closer to the surf here, but not too close. I don't need wet feet with the water temperature 42 degrees. Oh, beautiful. This is just beautiful here today, folks. About every 5th or 6th roller coming in way offshore, a couple of 100 yards offshore, you can see they're much higher than the others, and they're breaking way out on the outer sandbar and then reforming and rolling into the beach here. Now the last time we were here, a couple of weeks ago, was it Christmas Day I came? I think so. And it was just totally the opposite. It was like a summertime ocean, very calm, no giant waves to speak of. Okay, good people, I hope you enjoyed this short trip to Fire Island National Seashore here at Smith Point, Suffolk County, Long Island, New York. pathway. And where we are walking now, I can see from the smoothness of the sand and everything, this all would have been underwater at the last high tide. As a matter of fact, another 75 feet up here, I'll show you the high water mark line. We can see where the debris had washed in the previous high tide. People are enjoying this, walking along here. No vehicles beyond this point. In other words, you can't drive any four-wheel drive vehicles on the county beach, but with a permit, certain times of the year, you can drive a four-wheel drive vehicle on the national Seashore beach here, and folks use those to go down and go surf casting along the beach here. Also surfers themselves, although I don't see any surfers today with the conditions. But again, if I look this direction, you can see where the tide reached, the last high tide. See how the coloring is different and the debris is there, the darker sand. And if I spin around, that's a couple of 100 feet in from where the water is right now. Alright, let's walk up to the walkway. Next time we come over, I'll take a walk again down the nature trail. We'll do that loop. Finely ground quartz sand here, primarily quartz. Beach is created by the glaciers, the last glacial period. This would have been the outwash of the glaciers. Long Island was formed by the glaciers. And then, if you go by history, the ocean level during the last ice age would have been, they say, about another 600 feet lower than what it is now. Connection is awful? Okay, well, we have to live with what we have here. Okay, good folks. Thanks again for joining today. And I hope you enjoyed this little walk tour. And we'll be back on the air again one of these fine days.